मीडिया ग्रुप के ऑफिशियल यूट्यूब चैनल। आप देख रहे हैं संगर ऑनलाइन।
We at the Sangar publication would like to thank you for participating in this interview. We really appreciate hearing your views on the current situation in Afghanistan. Afghanistan has been affected by war for the past 4 decades. Why do you think this war has lasted for so long?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think we have to go a little back in time and have a look at the consequences and the events unfolded at the time of President Daud Khan, the first president of Afghanistan. In 1355 Hijri Shamsi, which is an Afghan calendar, the Pakistanis trained an army of 5,000 expat Afghans who had run away from Afghanistan into Pakistan, and they wanted to send them back to Afghanistan to fight against the Afghan government. The reason was that they wanted to weaken Afghan government, and it was easier for them to weaken Afghan government in order to be able to stand against their other enemy, which was India. So this army was well equipped, and they had guerrilla activities like throwing acid on women's faces, and prior to 1355 Hijri Shamsi, and other activities. But after the 1355, they were organized properly by the ISI and the Pakistani government army to be trained, and also they wanted to send them to Afghanistan. But the Pakistani lax struck when in 1357, which is I think around 1979, and the Russian invasion and the Communist Party came into the power. This event was something like, for Pakistanis, it was like a dream come true. They immediately decided, that they will help and mobilize those Afghan trained guerrillas which they had in the name of Mujahideen, and later on they were, and this whole thing became very huge and it took world's attention.
How has this war affected Afghanistan?
Wars are always destructive, and it always have an adverse effect on economy, politics, culture, and all other aspects of life in a country. And the longest war, I think this is one of the longest wars in the world that is fought. 40 years is a long, long time. Afghanistan has never come back to its prior to 1979's time. When there was peace, stability, good economy, people were getting a proper education. This war has, there's a lot of different side effects that came as a result of this war in Afghanistan, which is still continuing.
Many Afghans have been forced to leave their country and take asylum elsewhere due to this war. What kind of difficulties do Afghan refugees across the world face?
We have we had more than 5 million Afghans displaced, some were in Pakistan, some were in Iran, some in Central Asia, Europe, also internally displaced Afghans. This 5 million displaced Afghans, they really lived in a very bad condition in different countries, even in Afghanistan. Imagine if you leave your home and try and nest somewhere else and start a new life. You will have to face a lot of difficulties to come back to a normal, which is not possible, but at least near a normal life that you would otherwise live. This has affected the next generations of Afghans who were born and displaced in different countries in the world. For example, a child was born in the United States, he almost picked more than 50% of the behavior, the culture, the traditions, the language, and other cultural, political, and socio-economical effects. It affected their life. The same goes with all the other refugees, and that's also one of the drawbacks. When we had more than 3.5 million refugees in Pakistan, you know, the madrasas in Pakistan, which are nurtured by the Pakistani ISI, and they are keeping terrorists, they are training terrorists in these madrasas, and also they are trained to become suicide bombers. This is also the outcome of this displacement of Afghans around the world.
Why have so many extremist groups infiltrated Afghanistan?
When there is no rule of law in a country, when the government is weak and disabled, and the country is occupied by different foreign forces, this is a must that when there is breeding ground for insects and they are breeding ground for germs, usually you see the germicides, you know, they gather there and they nurture there and they grow up. Afghanistan became a dump where all these miscreants, these terrorist organizations, they found a safe haven where they could train, they could stay, and they could live, and they could rest until they go back to their countries and start their terrorist activities. Because of weak governments, because of open borders with Pakistan and Iran, this problem has occurred in Afghanistan, and these people, they have come to Afghanistan, and still there are training camps of different terrorist organizations like ISIS, Daesh, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, and other organizations. They are active in parts of Afghanistan where there is no rule of law, there is no government control on them.
What are your views on Pakistan's interference in Afghanistan and its impact?
Like I said in the questions before you asked, Pakistan has been interfering in Afghanistan ever since, and it's not the Pakistani government, you know, that initially started these initiations. These initiations, these interference have been governed or been directed by the United Kingdom in the beginning, and then the lead was given to the United States, and they have been interfering in Afghanistan. In 1953, President Nixon, then he was the Secretary of State, visited Afghanistan when Sardar Dawood Khan was the Prime Minister of Afghanistan. They had quarrel in the United States Embassy when Agnes Ward was the ambassador of the United States in Kabul. And he was trying to convince Sardar Dawood Khan that the Durand Line is a legitimate border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And Sardar Dawood Khan was emphasizing that there are no agreements, there are no documents, there are no legal, there is no legal border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And Durand Line is not a border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. On this, they had arguments, and finally Nixon left Afghanistan in 1955. In the Central Conference, he announced Durand Line as border of Afghanistan. So the United States, the United Kingdom, the European Union, now that it's called the European Union, all of them, they favor the Durand Line. And this is the fundamental problem with Afghanistan, with the terrorism. And this is the fundamental problem, not only with Afghanistan, but with the rest of the world. The recent efforts that is made by the United States to bring peace in Afghanistan is impossible unless the Durand Line issue is resolved. Have a look at the Baloch issue. Now, the Afghans, the Pashtuns on both sides of the Durand Line has 1,000 kilometers of border. That's fine, we just leave that aside. We have 1,400 kilometers of border between Balochistan and Afghanistan. But none of the Baloch leaders were present, even if there was an agreement signed between Henry Mortimer Durand and Amir Abdurrahman Khan. Therefore, 1400 kilometers of this Durand line is null and void from the day it was even, anticipated, or it's said that it's been drawn or it's been signed. Therefore, Baloch, they want their freedom. Baloch, they are determined to remove the Durand line and have a soft border with Afghanistan, and they want to have their own government. If they deny to remove the Durand line between the Afghans, Pashtuns of the Afghans on the other side of the Durand line and this side of the Durand line, but if they deny this, they cannot deny the freedom of Balochistan. They cannot deny Balochs having a soft border with Afghanistan.
How would it be possible to bring about peace in Afghanistan?
In fact, peace is only possible when all stakeholders they join hands together with a good faith, try to stabilize Afghanistan. Afghanistan's peace is not only for Afghans, but it's for the world. If we go back again in time, prior to 2000, 1998, 1999, Afghanistan was the safe haven for all the terrorists in the world. You name any terrorist organization in the world, they had their bases in Afghanistan. And Pakistan always tried to use Afghanistan as a safe haven for their miscreants, for their illegal activities, drug supplies to Central Asia, Middle East, Russia, Europe, and finally to the United States. Also, they had groups of organizations, such dangerous groups of organizations such as Al-Qaeda, that was hiding in Sudan, I believe. They were brought to Afghanistan and they were being safeguarded by the Pakistani ISI and other terrorist organizations. They were kept in Afghanistan and they were trained. The results were the 9/11 incident in the United States, the 7/7 in London, Madrid bombing, Bombay bombing, and other mishaps that was managed, and also it was partly, kind of governed or from the back. These activities were being mobilized by the ISI. Now, a question arises: why would ISI starts bombing United States when United States is giving a lot of money, or giving a lot of money to Pakistanis? The terrorists have their own demands. If you grow an organization into, if you keep them into your country or some other country and you support them, and they don't do it just because whatever the ISI wanted, they would do that, and they wouldn't do other activities which they wanted to do. So they had their own will as well. They had their own programs as well, and those programs were also supposed to be supported by the ISI and the Pakistani government, which the results were clear, and we have evidence that all the terrorists that had been involved in these activities in these countries, they had direct or indirect connections with ISI and also the Pakistani government. And they were nurtured in Pakistan, they were trained in Pakistan, they were sent to Afghanistan into training camps to rest, and then they were sent to United States, United Kingdom, and other countries to blow up themselves and also to conduct terrorist activities.
Is it possible to eradicate extremist ideology in Afghanistan? If so, how?
To be honest, it's not easy task to exterminate or remove extremist ideologies in a country where it has been in war for the past 40 years. What can happen is a good, solid government in Afghanistan who's not been dictated by a foreign country or a neighboring country or a puppet of another country. Then the possibility is that we will have partially or kind of between a democratic country and a dictatorship, which dictates those terrorists or those organizations who are involved in terrorist activities, and at the same time try and govern Afghanistan in a democratic way. This can help not only Afghanistan to become peaceful, but this will also help, in the long run, to eliminate terrorists from Afghanistan. One of the reasons why this is not so easy to happen, and why it's not possible there is no shortcut, or there is no quick solution for it, is because we have porous borders with Pakistan, and we are not able to make borders with Pakistan because of the Durand line, and the Afghans living on the other side of the Durand line. And this is a problem that we have been suffering for the past 125 years. The international community knows, the United States, United Kingdom, European Union, East, West, everyone knows that this is an illegal line which has been drawn by Henry Mortimer Durand on the hearts of Afghans on both sides of the Durand line. And Pakistan is using this as an advantage point to infiltrate into Afghanistan and train terrorists in Afghanistan. Good examples are the SHAARI Quetta, the Haqqani network, which both are, one is in Quetta and one is in Waziristan in Pashtunistan. This indicates that unless and until we have a solution to the Durand line, and we have a permanent border with Pakistan on the Achak Bridge, or on pre-1893 Afghanistan, it's very difficult to come to a conclusion that we will eliminate terrorism from Afghanistan or having a peaceful Afghanistan.
The British government drew the Durand line between India and Afghanistan. Both Balochistan and Afghanistan were affected by this. What were the real instigators of this act?
Honestly, when the British government tried to draw this line, then Henry Mortimer Durand and the British government wanted a buffer zone between India and Afghanistan, and then again Afghanistan becoming another buffer zone between Russia and this Durand line. So they wanted to create two buffer zones to be sure, that if the Russians, they attack India, and they have enough time, to prepare for the war against Russia and safeguard themselves. When they were drawing the line, which is a fake line, which is called the Durand line, they did not realize that they were tearing apart families. They didn't care about the human rights aspects of this line. They didn't care about how the people will suffer in the hundreds of years that will come. And this has not only affected the Afghans on both sides of the Durand line, but this has also affected the Balochs emotionally, because the Balochs were not aware that there will be a line between Afghanistan and Balochistan. If we look at the history of Afghans and Balochs during the Ahmad Shah Baba's reign, Sardar Nasir Khan Nuri and Ahmad Shah Abdali, they made an agreement that they will respect each other's land, they will respect each other's people, and always, they will cooperate with each other if in times when there are problems for either of the countries. So as two good and friendly nations, Afghanistan and Balochistan had always had very good relations. Unfortunately, this Durand line has affected the lives of Baloch and the lives of Afghans on both sides of the Durand line.
Pakistan unlawfully occupied Balochistan in 1948. What are your views on this?
The illegal occupation of Balochistan by Pakistani army, and later on, it's been governed by the Pakistani government, is a shame for the whole world, a shame for the whole civilization. Everyone has kept looking when Pakistan occupied Balochistan, and Pakistan has made atom bomb that they blew it up, they exploded, they did the tests in Balochistan. And even today, we have women and children suffering as a result of these tests. The chemical effect of these atomic tests in Balochistan has made the people of Balochistan suffer for the past many decades. The whole world is very quiet and they don't want to mention what is happening to Balochistan. I think it's just about time that the world sit down and think, why we have to ignore the plight of the Baloch. When there is something happening to a Kurdish people, or probably Bosnian people, or some other people in the world, there is a lot of Hong Kong, for example. The United States president, in probably in 2 weeks of trouble, he comes and he makes a note of Hong Kong trouble, and inform the Chinese government to go soft on Hong Kong Chinese citizen. Unfortunately, for the past 70 or more than 70 years, the oppression of the atrocities are happening on the Baloch people. Unfortunately, neither the United States, nor the United Kingdom, neither the European Union or any other country has stood up to the voice of the Baloch to answer, why they are quiet about the Baloch problem, why they are not listening to the plight of the Baloch. We see demonstration in Germany, in the United Kingdom, in the United States, in all other countries. Baloch with their little things that they have in their hands, with a little financial means and little other means that they have, they try to raise their voice. Unfortunately, their voice has been suppressed. A recent happening in the UK, when Baloch, they try to make advertisement on buses and taxis to announce, what's happening, to show to the world what's happening to the Baloch. Unfortunately, this was the British government has stopped it because of the request of the ISI and the Pakistani government. If they are pro-democracy, if they think, that they are the champions of democracy, they should stop, they should raise their voice for the people of Balochistan. They cannot raise the slogan of democracy in Afghanistan and in Africa and in East, Far East, Middle East, and all the rest of the world, whereas under their noses in Balochistan, people have been massacred, people have been killed, women have been tortured, children have been killed and dismembered, and the whole world sits quiet and says nothing about it. I think it's about time, if the world wishes to help Baloch get their freedom, or if they don't wish to help Baloch get their freedom, Baloch will ultimately get their freedom. But this will be, the Baloch will come back to this international community and to the world, and they will say, yesterday when we were in trouble, you did not help us.
What can the UN, current world powers and human rights organizations do to bring about the independence of Balochistan and peace in Afghanistan?
Since 1948, 27 March 1948, Balochistan has been occupied by Pakistanis. Balochistan is a free state, but the world has turned a blind eye to Balochistan and the Baloch plea for independence. Muhammad Ali Jinnah was a lawyer, and he took the case of Free Balochistan with the British India government prior to 14 August 1947. On the 11th of August 1947, Balochistan got their freedom. Baloch, they got their freedom. They had their houses of parliament and they had their own government. Unfortunately, by the same people, by the same Jinnah, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, this was occupied in 1948, 1 year later. Now, why the world powers, why the human right or international community is giving less attention to Baloch because they are favoring Pakistan and they want to use Pakistan as a platform to create a shield against Russia and China and other powers. But nowadays it's making an adverse effect on what the decisions they have made. So far in the past 60, 70 years, Balochs have been suffering, and the human rights organization like the human rights organizations, they have kept quiet on the genocide of Balochs and whatever the atrocities happen in Balochistan. But now they cannot close their eyes because this whole issue is coming into light. The world is becoming aware of how Balochs are suffering. Thanks to social media and other media outlets, that's easier, to get your message through to the world. Now in every nook and corner of the world, people knows how Balochs are suffering and what is the Baloch problem. Now you can see that Baloch freedom movement leaders and Baloch people are getting their voice heard all around the world. Now the United States, the international community, the human rights organizations cannot deny the atrocities of Pakistani army, Pakistani government on the Balochs. More than 28,000 Balochs have been disappeared. This is not only happening to the Baloch, it's happening to the Hazaras, it's happening to the Pashtuns, it's happening to the Sindhis, Mahajirs, Baltistanis, and anyone who is raising a voice for freedom.